Hey everyone, welcome to TRS. We are live. Welcome to TRS, everyone. We are live this evening with Ben Immanuel. He has over 100 IMDb credits. He's won awards, acting, writing, stand-up comedy, and even boxing. You've done it all, Ben, and we are so excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's our pleasure.
And what are you going to do? What do you want to get into today?
I just want to jump in really quick. Just a reminder, if anybody wants to chat with us during this Ask Ben Any questions, please feel free to hit up our Twitch and YouTube while we are here. So.
Cool. I want to mention real quick that we're going to talk about lifespan of a fact at the closer to the end of the show. So be sure to stay with us as we talk with Ben, and also just point out that Lifespan of a Fact has next week's guest, Loretta Walsh. So we want to make sure we get the word out there about this. From everything I've read, this is going to be amazing. I wish I was in the area to go see it myself. In fact, who knows? I might find a way to get there. So sounds great. We're gonna get into more details.
You find your way here. We got a couple of tickets for you.
I am in love with the Vancouver area, and I've never even touched the west coast of the U.S. so far. But if I head that way, I might head north too.
Okay, sounds good.
There's a lot going on there. So Ben, I wanted to touch on the first obvious thing, but in it kind of maybe a different way than others have approached it. You've recently changed your name, and we don't need to go into the reasons why, but I was curious, like the process of doing so for you personally and emotionally, when you had to do that because somebody else was obviously nothing you have done wrong, but just to distance yourself. How did you go through that process mentally? And then also, maybe I'll ask this later, but the name you did go with is your middle name. How did you stick on that?
Well, my birth name, I was born Benjamin Immanuel Ratner, and I started my whole life through being a kid, and then when I got a teenager, I was a boxer, so I fought under that name, and then when I phased out of boxing, I started playing music, and so we did a lot of press and a lot of stuff in the music world under that name, and then I started acting, and then I started stand-up and writing for some local newspapers, and then acting. So I did, like over 50 years of my life as with that name. In 2017, I think it was, when the Me Too movement, became very prominent. There's a director, producer, Brett Ratner, who was Me Too'd and disgraced. And, at that time, once in a while, somebody would come to me and they go, "Hey, I heard something." And I go, no. Like people would get Brett Ratner and Ben Ratner mixed up. And it sounds pretty similar, if you say it fast or if you just hear it. And I didn't like that one bit. And I remember talking to my agent and saying, "Do you think I need to change my name?" And she said, "Not yet. Let's see what happens here with this." So 2021, I was, I don't know, I was ready. I was thinking like, you have a career, you have a life, and for somebody who tries really hard to do something, you build up this sort of idea that everything matters. And like, well, what about all the work I've done or people who know me? And then I realized, moving forward in my life, I'm not doing this for the people who already know me to try to prove anything. I am who I am, and I've done what I've done. But there's a lot of people out there who don't know me and don't know my work. And if some sort of cancel culture glitch causes me to lose any opportunities, if I go into an audition as an actor and somebody hears the name Ben Ratner and they just kind of jolt and cringe, or if I'm writing something or producing or directing something, if somebody hears that name and gets the wrong idea, and I've been told that has happened a couple of times where people just kind of glitched because they don't want to be associated with somebody who's canceled.
Yeah.
And so, I knew that like if I changed my name, so people who know me would go, "What is he having, a midlife crisis?" And if I didn't change my name, if you have to care enough to change it, and you have to not care enough to change it. So
I know that's where I was wondering. Like,
when I finally did it and said, fuck it, I don't really care. Like, it's just, I'm moving forward with my life. And I felt great. And Immanuel's my middle name. I always thought it was a much cooler name than Ratner.
Understandable.
I was cautious, apprehensive that my dad, because, you know, it's his name, I thought he might be pissed off or insulted. And he actually wasn't at all. He said, you know, when he was young, he wasn't really crazy about his name because, you know, sometimes Ratner, Rat.
Sure.
Characters in movies, when there's a Ratner, you know, Fast Time in Ridgemont High, there was a Ratner.
Nerdy.
Nerdy. Actually, in Uncut Gems, there was a Ratner, the lead played by our guy, Adam Sandler. I believe he was a Ratner in that movie. So Ratner can have certain connotations. I don't know. You know, I'm feeling good. I'm like in the second half of my life, and Immanuel's a good name. And you know, I understand and appreciate the question, and it will lead into something that we're going to talk about later when we talk about the play I'm doing, because that play is so much of it is about how every little thing counts now, because everything is so closely monitored and scrutinized online everywhere by everyone.
And kept forever.
So yeah, exactly. It counts forever. So yeah, it was an unburdening, and it kind of broke me free, and also in some ways from some just kind of a legacy that you know, I'm an older guy now. I got to kind of start my own thing and do my own thing. So it felt really good. I recommend it to anybody who thinks about changing their name to just go ahead and do it, because like, if anybody's got a problem with it, people change a lot more than their names these days. You know what I mean?
They
People
do,
in the world have the freedom to change so many things about their identity and their gender and their religion or their faith or whatever. So a name is a name.
You can change your whole face nowadays. So it's yeah. And it's not even like, hey, well, they changed their face. Oh well. Did you have any names picked out besides your middle name? Like, just completely, if you're going to change it, did you just like, you know, I'm going to go with Lance Steele?
That Slate Reno.
Oh.
Yeah. No, that was an old stupid name. That was a joke in something I had written for a cheesy name. You know, if I had just gone with a random name that I came up with because it sounded cool, I think I would have been embarrassed about that. I think I would have been embarrassed. I think it would have been like, give me a break. But because it's my name, you know, and because
I get it. Yeah.
Immanuel is spelled, I spell it, it's Immanuel, which is kind of unique. And you don't see as many of
Zaz
those.
is laughing down there because he did a bunch of research on somebody that wasn't you.
Oh, no kidding. Ben Immanuel, there's a religious, I think he's like a preacher from somewhere in Africa, that guy?
Yeah. Definitely not you. Yes, definitely not you.
Yeah. I mean,
to the point where I was visibly confused.
So that's the name. That's it. Let's move on. What do you say?
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
I wanted to get like the emotional, and you definitely gave that, like, and I loved your answer of, you know, you have to be comfortable enough with it, or, you know, okay with it, and not okay with, you know, the whole thing. Like, there's that.
I think you have to care enough to do it and not care enough to do it, because some people are going to roll their eyes, people who know you, but I'm looking at a world of people who don't know me. And, you know, it's a big world out there. People, when I did it, my mother said, but everyone knows you here, and everyone knows you in Vancouver, and everyone knows you in Canada. They all know you, and now they're not going to know who you are. And I thought, that's okay. Like, there's a lot of people out there in the world, you know?
There is. And you've been known in a lot of places. You started off with winning an award in boxing, which we'll cover. We're going to talk about Ganji and how you got there. But you also won awards in stand-up comedy. That part surprised me the most. That was your first step into, first or second step into entertainment. What got you on stage? It's a terrifying thing at first. And we've interviewed comedians, and I'm always fascinated about that first time on stage and what got you there.
Well, you know, I maybe part of it is being a short guy. I'm a shorter guy, and I think as a little kid, when you're a little guy, you find ways to stand out and to prove yourself. So, I started boxing because of my deep love for Muhammad Ali. He's the guy who
Mhm.
really lit that fire. And in Vancouver here, nobody was boxing. Like a lot of people played hockey or they play soccer. Some people play baseball, not a ton of football here.
No.
Rugby is a more Canadian thing or a European thing, but not too many people were boxing in Vancouver. So when I started boxing, I stood out, and I loved Ali, and turned out I was, pretty good at it, and I worked hard at it, and I ended up over a number of years. I fought as far as the Canadian Junior Nationals. And, I thought I wanted to be a boxer until I fought a guy who really wanted to be a boxer. And then you go, okay, this is another situation. And that guy went on. Howard Grant was my last fight, and he went on to win, or he fought in the Olympics. I believe he took home a bronze medal, and he became a professional and ended up being the boxing trainer to Georges St-Pierre, the MMA fighter.
If you're going to go down, they go down to a guy like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he didn't get me down. I was the only
Well
guy
done.
in the tournament who went 3 rounds with him, but I can't say that I really remember much of it.
And I'm sorry, did you say he trained with St-Pierre? Like
he became Georges St-Pierre's trainer years later.
Okay, guys, I don't know if you know what that means. Just
I
legendary. Okay, that is legend.
Yeah, he became
Well done,
his
sir.
specifically.
Well done.
But, it was a long, like decades ago, So when the boxing, you could go to a certain level, and when it becomes apparent that you can't go any further, and I was pretty badly concussed, like sports, contact sports, football, boxing, hockey, people get hurt, right? So fortunately, in life, the luck of the draw, it's the kind of the people you meet and the people you make friends with, and it's just so random and arbitrary, right? But I made friends with a guy named Shale Wrench, who was an incredible singer and guitar player. And when we were in high school, and we started, he made me, I was the guy who they'd go, here, you play bass, right? So I ended up being the bass player and writing the lyrics for the songs. I always liked writing. And when we were really young, we ended up playing some pretty big shows, opening for some, we had sort of a reggae band. So we'd open for reggae bands. And we were 16, we were playing in front of like 1,000 people in a beautiful ballroom called the Commodore Ballroom. And by the time we were 19, we were playing in the Coliseum with Bryan Adams opening for him. So I got some really great experiences when I was really young, some really exciting times being in the ring.
That's amazing.
As a boxer and being on stage. Thank you. Yeah, it was real. It's luck, and it was hard work and focus, but through the boxing and through the music, I knew something wasn't quite right for me. I knew I really hadn't found my groove, and then I did stand up just because I wanted to be a writer. And one of the greatest ways to see if your stuff is good is you just get up on stage and say it, and you get immediate feedback, right? So I was, I had kind of I'd say like what a schmuck I am type act, you know what I mean? One of those self-deprecating type acts when I started. I put myself down a lot, and some, I got to a certain level with it, and I went in a couple of contests and got a couple of wins in these stand-up contests. But you do stand up, you're in a bar, and people are hammered and they're yelling and making noise, and you're really not quite. You have to. It's crowd control. A lot of stand-up is crowd control. And of course the masters, they learn how to control that crowd, so you can hear a pin drop and they can control the crowd, even an unruly crowd. That takes years and years of dedication and years of work on the road, doing bars and touring. Yes. I mean, stand-up's changed so much now with, because people just become famous on Instagram, right? Or on TikTok or whatever. But, back in the day, you were in the clubs banging it out. I knew I didn't want that life. I knew I didn't want to be around drunk people all the time trying to get them to listen to me. So the next natural step was acting. And as soon as I started acting, I felt like this is it. I'm at home.
Is it?
And my insecurities went away around what I was going to do with my life. And I said, this is it. I can do this, you know? So I didn't look back. And that was 1989 when I started studying acting. And that's how I ended up doing it.
Was the fact that you were a boxer, did that help you deal with the hecklers?
Are there hecklers in Canada?
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, people, you listen, in Vancouver, where I live, it's this beautiful, chill place with mountains and ocean. It's been said, there's a playwright, a Canadian playwright, Morris Panish, who said Vancouver is a beautiful woman without a thought in her head, right? So you get the idea that it's a blissed out place, but we had a couple of very serious riots in Vancouver when we didn't win the Stanley Cup. People go crazy and we're turning over cars in the streets and burning the city down, right? So yeah, Canadians are tough. Canadians are tough. If you don't want to cross a Canuck.
Oh no.
Facts. Facts. Yeah.
I've interviewed a lot of Canadians recently, and I love the country. I do, and I got so much more respect every time I talk to Canadian. It just keeps. We do want to point out that nobody's actually being murdered in the. This is your acting studio, so there might be.
We don't know that's a fact, Nathaniel.
Are you hearing things?
A little bit. Don't worry about it. I just wanted to point out if anybody else is like, "What's going on?" or thinks one of us has a TV or something.
Okay.
So you touched on this real quick, and it's something I've been developing in my head. Is a successful or a good comedy routine essentially written in a well-acted and written soliloquy?
Well, that depends on the comedian, of course, right? I mean, some people are very, very prepared. Somebody like, I don't know, Seinfeld, right? Every word, every beat, every breath, very carefully worked out. Not a lot of crowd interaction. Would really avoid crowd interaction.
For instance.
Louis C.K., pretty tight, pretty worked out, you know? Not afraid, I guess, in his to get up on stage and kind of see what happens, but not really a crowd work guy, you know? And then who's this kid who's become so famous? I can't remember his name right now. This really handsome guy.
Matt Rife.
That's right. Is that the guy?
The audience.
Right.
Yep.
So it seems like it's 95% crowd work. And
he's great at it most of the time. I'm jealous of his ability to do crowd work.
Yeah, I mean, and he's just, you know, you can tell he loves being on stage, right? He loves standing in that spotlight and soaking up that attention. So, you know, that kind of act is very different than, you know, a Seinfeld or a more traditional comedian. My favorite was always Richard Pryor, who Pryor kind of took it to another level where it became, you know, not sad, but at times very, very poignant and very revelatory, very vulnerable, right? Pryor, you know, it was societal because it was so personal. He sure did, right? Through no matter what happened to him, he always found the humor in it. From, you know, a horrible, brutal childhood, being raised in a whorehouse, to, you know, his addiction and, you know, setting himself on fire. He always came back.
10 minutes,
he always came back.
Yeah.
He was, to me, he was like the Muhammad Ali of comedy.
Oh, wow.
No matter how many times he got put down, he always got back up, and he found, and he became more and more human with every, you know, obstacle that took him down. He got back up stronger and just sort of more human and more genuine every time.
Yeah. I always appreciated him. I was a George Carlin fan.
Carlin was great.
Dyed in the wool Carlin fan, but Pryor was something else. You listen to it in a different way, I think, is the best way to say.
Yeah, and he was such a great performer, wasn't he?
Yeah. So let's get back to your career. Yeah. Oh, great actor. I anything with him and Wilder and I watch. I don't care if it's not one of their popular movies, if it's on, or if I can find it.
Wilder is, as an acting teacher, I tell people, watch Gene Wilder and watch how he takes intensity through the roof into the stratosphere. Like that guy is just the best.
I 100% agree. He's always, again, there are movies he's in that people are like, it's not, I don't care. It's Wilder. You watch it. It's Pryor and Wilder. You watch it. Have a great one. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Be safe out there. Treat each other well.